Hello, everyone, and welcome to Slash Film Daily for Sunday, April 14th, 2019. On today's episode, we're going to talk with Brad Oman, who is at Star Wars Celebration 2019, and we're going to find out about Star Wars, the Rise of Skywalker. He saw the trailer and the presentation. He saw the new Hasbro toys. Star Wars Galaxies Edge had a presentation. They unveiled Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order, the video game. They had that VR Vader Immortal experience. And of course, what probably everybody is looking to hear, the Mandalorian, the live action TV series coming to Disney Plus. So we have a jam-packed episode of this podcast filled with Star Wars goodness. This is Slash Film Editor-in-Chief Peter Sciretta, and joining me on today's podcast is Slash Film Weekend Editor Brad Oman.
Hey, that's me.
So this is I just did the count before we started recording. This is the 13th episode that we've recorded this month, and we're only 14 days into the month. So we've almost given everybody, on average, one episode a day. Including weekends. So I'm not sure if we're going to be recording an episode tomorrow on Monday. We might take a day off from the podcast then, but we have a lot to talk to you about, Brad. I guess let's start off at the beginning. The Rise of Skywalker. You were at the presentation. What was it like to be at Star Wars Celebration? You're in Chicago. You're in the room. What was the vibe?
Yeah, I mean, the excitement was high here at Star Wars Celebration, as you can guess. I mean, everyone there was just pumped, waiting to hear anything that they could from the movie. Everyone assumed that we were getting a title. Everyone assumed that we were seeing the first trailer. Obviously, those assumptions were correct. But, every little kind of detail that was talked about during the panel, like, you could just hear fans, like, hanging, and, like, getting excited when they heard just the slightest bit of, what's going on with Rey, what's going on with Finn and Poe and Kylo and all this stuff. And, like, every time they showed a new photo from the production on screen during the panel, there were, like, gasps and cheers. And the energy here is just so incredible. It really has the same kind of exciting feel that when you're at Comic-Con and they're unveiling stuff for the first time. And everyone here is just so in love with Star Wars that it's just, it feels great. And even watching the trailer for the first time with that group of people is such an experience, because they clap when Rey flips over, that TIE fighter, and they, everyone lost their shit when you hear Emperor Palpatine's laugh at the very end of the trailer. And so it's great to experience that with such a huge group of people who are all seeing it for the first time.
That's one of the questions I wanted to have to you is at the end of that trailer, we get that laugh, the Emperor Palpatine laugh. And I know we recorded a 15-minute podcast talking about that trailer and about that laugh. Chris was really down on the prospect of Emperor Palpatine coming back for this final film. What has been the reaction there from fans?
Immediate reaction was shock. You could hear the gasps. You could hear people go, "What?" when you hear the laugh. And then people went even crazier when Ian McDiarmid appeared after the trailer had played. And literally all that happened is he was like standing there on the middle of the stage, and they shined a spotlight on him, and he just stood there with a microphone, and in his Emperor Palpatine voice, he said, "Run it again." And people just lost it. So there's excitement for sure. And I think that despite, because I'm partly with Chris on this, where I'm not really sure how I feel about a character like the Emperor coming back. It felt like this trilogy was going in a far more interesting direction without going back and relying on stuff that had already happened in the past. But at the same time, I do understand and appreciate the idea of the Emperor having a hand in all of this in some way that we didn't know about, because he's integral to what happens in the first two trilogies. So as long as there's some kind of satisfying explanation for his return, and keep in mind, we don't necessarily know in what form he's returning, whether he's like weak or if he's strong and has been puppeteering and just waiting for his like time to reveal himself again, or anything like that. So I just the prospect, I think, is intriguing, but also somewhat concerning to me. And some fans are just like they're just wondering, all fans really, exactly where he's been, what his role in all of this is. So it's interesting to say the least.
Yeah, I'm curious to find out how people are going to react once we find out more about this. But we should move on because we've talked enough about the Rise of Skywalker trailer. Let's talk about Vader Immortal. This is the VR experience coming from ILM X Lab. They've done stuff like they partnered with the Void on the Secrets of the Empire room scale experience, I guess it's called, right? And this is going to be more of a home experience on the Oculus, and you got to experience it yourself. And what is this, by the way? Tell us, what is Vader Immortal?
Yeah, so Vader Immortal is it's like a combination video game narrative thing that takes place in virtual reality. And it will debut with the Oculus Quest, which is a new headset coming from Oculus that is completely untethered. Up until now, the Oculus headsets have had to be hooked up to some kind of console or computer, so you're wired and you don't really have as much freedom to move around as you would with an untethered system. So the headset itself is the system, and the controllers in your hands are wireless, and so you can move around freely in 360-degree space to interact with what's unfolding in front of your eyes in the headset of virtual reality. And so the series itself takes place after the events of Revenge of the Sith. It takes place on Mustafar in Darth Vader's castle, where he has been trying to recruit somebody to help him achieve some kind of task. And your character that you are playing is this smuggler who Darth Vader apparently finds out has the ability to help him achieve whatever he's trying to do. And so in the VR experience, we got to check out two parts of it. The first part was a narrative part where you get an idea of what the story is unfolding, where you have been brought into the castle seemingly against your will, and there's this kind of robotic Imperial officer who has like half of a robot face and a robot arm talking to you in a very cocky way. He doesn't think you're going to be up to the task that Vader needs you. And so then Vader comes in. And what's cool about this VR experience is standing in the presence of Darth Vader is intimidating as hell. You don't really get a sense of his size when you see him in regular video games. And you do somewhat in the movies, but in VR, it's different because you're standing there and you have to like look up to meet his gaze. He towers over you. He's a big, intimidating presence when he walks into the room. And so it gives you this like little like holocron kind of cube that you have to open. The gameplay, at least in this part, it was just a simple thing where it makes it sound like it's some kind of puzzle, but really you're just holding the cube in one hand and you have to push this like glowing button that's on it. Like anybody could have picked up this cube and realized, oh, I should probably push this and it'll open it. So it's a setup for you being the one that Darth Vader's been looking for, and he needs you to help him, complete some kind of mysterious task. And then the second part took place in this area that is called a Lightsaber Dojo, which is where you can do training and basically just play around with wielding a lightsaber in this 360-degree space. It had three different waves. One where it had the floating ball droid that shoots blasters at you from Star Wars A New Hope, and you have to deflect the blasters. And then another part had these floating droids come up that have this glowing red blade that looks kind of like a lightsaber but doesn't seem to be exactly a lightsaber, and you have to spar with it and deflect all of its blows and then slice it in half. And then the third wave, all of that happens at once, so you have to deflect lasers and also fight the robot and try not to get hit with the sword or the laser blast. And the lightsaber effect is done incredibly well. The motion feels natural and smooth. The controller hums in your hand, so it feels like you're actually holding the lightsaber. It feels so cool that I just found myself twirling it in my hand, taunting whatever was in front of me, and just it really makes you feel cool within the virtual reality space. So it was a really fun experience, and I'd like to get a chance to try out more of it. The narrative itself, I guess, is going to be 45 to 60 minutes, and this is just the first part because it's episode 1, it's called, and they will continue the story with further installments.
Well, that's my big question to you because David S. Goyer is involved in this. He's someone who has written a lot of screenplays. He was involved in the Dark Knight series, and I feel like this is the first time that we're getting something from someone of that caliber behind the storytelling of the VR experience. Do you feel that?
No, you don't necessarily get a sense of what the caliber of what the story is going to be, but it's clear that the story will be an integral part of it. It's like playing a narrative video game where you were the main character and you're in the world by way of virtual reality. And so there's definitely a canon story here that provides some insight into like the history of Mustafar and the culture that exists there, and what this place was before Darth Vader built his castle there, and whatever he's trying to accomplish. Based on the title, I'm assuming he's trying to do something that will make him more powerful or make him live forever, or maybe something that even ties into bringing Padme back, because there's been a lot of stuff actually in the comics that reference these kinds of things. What he was doing at the castle. So they did mention that there were some little things that like might come into play here from the comics, and things that reference what's happening on Mustafar.
And also with Palpatine returning in the Rise of Skywalker, maybe there'll be some kind of setup for explanation of how that's possible.
It's definitely a possibility.
Yeah. Okay, you can check out the trailer for that on slashfilm.com. I'll link it in the show notes. You're a big toy fan. You went to the Hasbro panel, and you got to see what they were unveiling for the next year of Star Wars toys. So what are we getting? What's exciting?
Yeah, so first of all, they didn't have any Episode 9 stuff. It's too early. Obviously, if Hasbro would have had that stuff before the title or trailer was released, it probably would have leaked beforehand. So no Episode 9 toys yet, but they do have a new line of Black Series figures that's coming out in the coming months, including a wave that has the Padawan Obi-Wan Kenobi from Phantom Menace, which is an exclusive here in Episode 1 packaging, but will be released as part of the main Black Series line. They also have a figure for Ezra and Chopper from Rebels, and a trio of figures from the Dr. Aphra comic, including Dr. Aphra herself and her two black droid companions. There's also a brand new Emperor Palpatine that's coming. It's much better than the one they released initially. Not only does the figure have more cloth assets, the bottom part of his cloak used to be just a rubber sculpt before. Now it's cloth, and since that gives him the ability to actually sit and not look goofy, they're including the Emperor's throne with the figure, as well as Force Lightning accessories and 2 extra head sculpts, and he looks awesome. And then the Archive collection is continuing. This is where they're bringing back figures that were previously released on the Black Series but have been retired. And some of these have been given new head sculpts using the photoreal technology, where they are 3D scanning actors' faces and 3D printing them so that they actually look a lot more like the actors now. So we're getting a new Anakin Skywalker from Revenge of the Sith, a new version of Darth Maul, and then they're also bringing back Yoda and the Scout Trooper in the Archive collection. And some of the Archive collection figures coming out this year are already available now. They did Boba Fett and IG-88, and I think Dengar was the other one, maybe? No, that might be right. Anyway, a trio of bounty hunters, and then also Pilot Luke Skywalker. So they'll be releasing like a handful of these figures each year, based on whatever ones they want to bring out of retirement and give updates to. And then obviously with Galaxy's Edge coming out, there will be some exclusive figures from the Black Series that you can only get at Galaxy's Edge. We've already seen one 3-pack that has Kylo Ren and a mouse droid and the Golden Stormtrooper character from Star Wars Resistance. But there's also a pack coming that's tied to the droids. A new pack features new versions of 3PO, R2, and BB-8, and they're also being joined by Rex, the famous Star Tours droid, who is known for DJing that ride. And then there's also a Smuggler's Run figure pack that comes with Rey, Chewbacca, some new Porgs, and Hondo Ohnaka. Well, the first time that he's getting a figure like this in the Black Series as well. And like I said, you'll only be able to get those at Galaxy's Edge. So you'll either have to have a friend get them if you're not willing to brave the crazy lines, or probably have to buy them on eBay for a big markup.
Yeah, I'm excited to finally get. Well, I do have a Rex figure. They produced one Rex figure that was sold in Disney parks, but it's kind of crappy. So I'm hoping this one is a little bit better, because I have a whole droid shelf which has tons of droids. So I'm always collecting those droids. Speaking of Galaxy's Edge, you attended this presentation by Walt Disney Imagineering. Basically, I guess it was kind of a primer, explaining a lot of what we already knew about Galaxy's Edge. This is obviously the land that is coming to Disneyland, Disney World theme parks, and it's opening later this year. What were some of the new things that we learned about in this presentation?
Yeah, first let me say that while the Galaxy's Edge panel was fun, I think that there wasn't tons of exciting new information here that we didn't already know. There were definitely some key things that were revealed here, but I feel like that they should have waited to reveal some things until this panel because otherwise there wasn't like all the concept art we had already seen. Most of the details on the rides were already shown. There was no new footage from those rides. But like I said, there were some cool things. One thing that, for me, I'm not like a huge theme park goer. Not that I don't like them, just because they're not near me and I'm not, always checking the theme park news. Yeah. But a lot of people seemed excited by this, which is a little bit weird to me. Apparently, people had been wondering exactly how theme park goers were going to be able to get soft drinks in Galaxy's Edge, because the park expansion itself is meant to take place in the Star Wars universe. So you don't see the normal things that you would otherwise see in theme parks. So
everything's in world. They're serving blue milk. They're serving all these like galactic delicacies. Like the meat you're eating is like some kind of,
alien meat.
Yeah, alien meat. So how are they going to serve Coca-Cola or whatever? Or like, Coke has deals with all the Disney parks. How are they going to sell them in these parks? And they unveiled this trailer basically establishing that they're going to be serving Coke in these parks. In the other, Coke produced drinks, but they're going to be served in these like what look to be, I would describe as a combination of like a Christmas ornament, like, the circular globe, like Christmas ornaments meets a grenade. And actually what it is actually, if you look up what a thermal detonator looks like in the Star Wars universe, that's what actually it is. And they explain that basically the idea is that you're drinking this beverage out of a reclaimed thermal detonator that you're buying it. But the Coke logo is written in Arabesh, which is the alien language across the Star Wars universe.
Sprite, Coca-Cola, and Diet Coke all have Arabesh, and then they also have the water. The what's Coke's brand? Is it Dasani or is it Aquafina? I forget.
I don't remember.
But yeah, they have a water bottle that also has Arabesh on it, which the water bottle doesn't look like anything special. I don't know if they like just gave up. They're like, well, these are cool enough. We'll just do a regular water bottle with like a Star Wars kind of label on it.
Well, the thing that worries me is I'm one of these people that, when I go out to eat, like I appreciate when the waiter or waitress, brings me like, before I'm finished with my soda, brings me another cup, because like I go through beverages really quick. I drink a lot, and the form function for these things seem very small to me.
Yeah, they're really small, and I wonder if maybe.
And I'm assuming because it's a theme park, it's going to be like $5 for one of these things.
Well, and plus because it's such a custom kind of bottle, so like I wonder if it would be cool if they had like some kind of fountain drink setup where it looked like it existed in the world, and you could fill up your bottle with soda, maybe for like a refill.
They aren't going to allow that. Not at all.
You don't know.
And also disappointing to me because I like Coke Zero so much better than Diet Coke. They're not having Coke Zero in these things. But anyways, I'm not going to complain too much about that. I'm sure many people are not even interested in the news that there's Coca-Cola in Batuu, but there you go. They also talked about, they revealed Yoda's going to appear somewhere in Star Wars Galaxy's Edge. They kind of, they said that Frank Oz is reprising his role. They said that not everything will be seen, sometimes heard, which makes me think that, like, we're going to, like Luke, hear the voices of past Jedi.
Yeah, that's what I think, too.
Or, I mean, they could do, like, a Force ghost, kind of like, Yoda shows up in different areas, kind of like as a almost holographic, like, translucent thing, but
yeah,
that'd be hard to do. What else do we... one of the other interesting things that I think we learned here is the Millennium Falcon Smuggler's Run experience, this ride that you're actually going to pilot the Millennium Falcon. You're actually going to be in control of this ride. This is all stuff we knew. And we knew that, like, how you do on this ride might follow you throughout the land. So if you crash the ship or, you damage the ship, bounty hunters might be after you throughout the land and stuff like that. But one thing we learned that was new is however you do on that ride, when you're exiting the Millennium Falcon through, like, the, out of the cockpit and through, down to the ramp, like, how that looks is going to be dependent on how well you did. So like it could look destroyed, it could look,
well, I don't think that they'll be changing like the look of the hallway, but what will happen is there'll be like red lights will be flashing and like there'll be alarms going off and like it'll be clear that you just messed up your ship.
No, and I think that's kind of cool. That's a cool touch. They also talked about this interactive app. Where did you see that?
Yeah, and it's I think it's an interesting way, I guess, to keep people active, especially since they will only have one ride that's there. It definitely creates this sense of
at opening, and then later this year.
Right. And it definitely creates this sense of competition, I think, with people who are in the park, because it's this ingress type game where you control different territories where there's like certain markers that you have to go and take over, kind of like a game of like territory, if you've ever played that in Halo or Call of Duty, where you have to try and control certain areas. And it's a battle basically between the First Order and the Resistance in holding down these various areas of the park.
Yeah. And you could read all about that. HT, I think, put together, and it's right up on all of that, and you can see screenshots of what the app looks like.
Coolest thing to me was the Orabesh translator, where you can use your phone and point it at any given sign in the middle of Batuu, and it translates it for you.
That's cool, and also you can intercept transmissions that are being transmitted by the Resistance or the First Order. There's a lot of cool things there. I'm very interested to see how it plays when you're actually in the park. And one other thing I'm actually very excited about is I own a lot of merchandise from the Disney parks, and at Galaxy's Edge, all the merchandise is going to be like produced in world. So you're not going to buy like Star Wars action figures. You're going to buy like a Stormtrooper doll, kind of like Jyn Erso had at the beginning of Rogue One. That kind of like handmade, like by one of the shop owners in that world. And on the show floor, you got to see a lot of the new Star Wars Galaxy's Edge merchandise, a preview of that. What were the highlights in your mind?
Yeah, they've been swapping out stuff pretty much every day here. There's even some new stuff today that I'm going to go and check it out and get some new photos. To me, the coolest thing was how they were handling the toys that are coming from the Toydarian Toy Maker Shop. Like you said, they'll have these wooden dolls of Star Wars characters. They also have plush ones that look like they're more homemade rather than these professionally, made plush toys that you normally see in stores. It has this just handcrafted quality to it that feels like people have heard legends about these characters and turned them into, figures for their kids to play with and imagine them. Much in the same way that you see at the end of The Last Jedi, where the kids are telling that story about Luke Skywalker and using these little makeshift figures to represent them. And then there's they had the cool creatures, and they have these awesome puzzles. They have a Jedi Holocron cube that looks like it will probably be like a Rubik's Cube kind of thing, but it looks wooden and it's carved very ornately. They actually are going to sell chance cubes, like the ones that you see in the Phantom Menace that have the red and blue sides. They have a wooden Dejeric board that comes with little alien figures, and flip it over and you can just play regular checkers on it.
I wonder if there's going to be rules to the holochess.
Oh, and there's also speaking of other games, there's a Sabacc game where the cards actually look a little bit worn, like they've been played with in the Star Wars universe, like from Solo: A Star Wars Story.
See, that's cool because I bought Hasbro produced ones and they were kind of cheap and not impressive. Some of the stuff I saw here that I thought was kind of impressive is they have like, when you are in the sun at a theme park, you want to be cooled down. They made a moisture, like with the moisture, what do you call those?
They made a portable fan out of a moisture evaporator.
Yeah, moisture evaporator. So it looks like those moisture evaporators that you saw on Tatooine, and it's a portable, I think probably sprays water and fans you at the same time, which is kind of fun. And I also saw some video. This isn't on the site, but someone was there and they sell they have a creature shop where you can buy, like, I guess, adopt creatures from the galaxy far, far away. Creature stall? Yeah, creature stall. Yes. And someone was demoing the creature, the Salacious Crumb toy, which I guess it actually isn't Salacious Crumb. It's one of those kind of aliens.
It's a Kowakian monkey lizard.
Yeah, and you put it on your shoulder, kind of like if anybody's seen the Banshees from Pandora, the World of Avatar in Florida, or if you've ever been to a Ren fair where people wear like, a dragon on your shoulder and it can like move and like talk and stuff. It's like that, but with Salacious Crumb, or, that creature that you just said. And I think that's going to sell tons.
Yeah, and it's we don't have the video, but you can see what it looks like. One of them does look like Salacious Crumb does in Return of the Jedi, but the other one is much more colorful, almost like a parrot, like a macaw that's blue and yellow and stuff.
Yeah, I want one of those frog-like creatures. I don't even know what those are called. But
they're called worts, Worrt, the ones that you see that quickly eat something in front of Jabba's palace.
Yeah, and they also had on display like a bunch of costumes, like realistic looking costumes.
Not like cheap Halloween costumes, but like legit cosplay costumes where you can dress up like Rey or Kylo Ren or a Jedi or an Imperial officer. Like they're gonna have a lot of cool, like legitimate wardrobe stuff that you can buy, and I'm sure it'll be very expensive.
Yeah. And kind of like when you go to the Wizarding World of Harry Potter, you can buy those the house gowns and stuff like that. You can buy like the Jedi robes, and what I think is interesting here, I'm not sure if you noticed this, Brad, but Jedi, like all these outfits in Star Wars don't have pockets. So to accommodate the real world of the real purpose that you'll need pockets, they built onto the belts accessories so you can actually like put on like basically a pocket. You can buy these extra pockets. I don't know. I just think it's funny that like they found.
I didn't see that. That's interesting though. Yeah. Another way for you to pay for things.
Yes. More stuff to buy. Okay, we probably talked way too much about Galaxy's Edge. Let's move on to video games. Let's talk about Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order. The trailer's online. You can see that on the site. I'll link that in the show notes. What is the setup for this video game?
So it is a fantasy adventure game featuring a Jedi as the main character. Right out of the gate, Electronic Arts wanted to make sure people who didn't really like what they did with Battlefront understood that this was not a game that was going to have multiplayer or microtransactions. They're going back to a narrative style that follows this Jedi Padawan who is on the run after surviving Order 66, which is the order that Palpatine sent out at the end of Revenge of the Sith, where the clone troopers killed almost all of the Jedi. So Cameron Monaghan, who is the actor who is now playing the Joker on Gotham, is playing the main character. His name is Cal Kestis, and he's on the run trying to stay hidden from Imperials, but he ends up saving a friend while doing this dangerous construction job by using the Force and grabbing him from a fatal fall. And so then...
and by the way, I saw this trailer, and it looks so much different than any other Star Wars game I've ever seen. Like, you're seeing, like, construction workers in the this galaxy, they're you're not seeing like fighting and warriors and stuff, and it's all about his struggle of like, should I use my powers where people could possibly see it and get exposed. To
be fair, this is a story trailer rather than a gameplay trailer, so that's to be expected, because they did definitely call this an action melee game, so there will be plenty of combat. And they emphasized that very much. But
there's only like 1 second of a lightsaber in this entire trailer.
Well, that's because it's a story trailer. It's setting up who this character is and what's happening. But they show you these new Purge troopers, which are technically not new because they were also part of the Force Unleashed, even though that's now just a Star Wars legend. But now the Purge troopers are canon again. They look a little bit different. They have staffs that have electrified ends on them, kind of similar to the staffs that General Grievous's guards had in Revenge of the Sith. And the Purge Troopers are basically the first responders to whenever there are rumors that there's a Jedi that is somewhere that is surviving, and they go in to like try and confirm it before they call in the Inquisitorius. And the main villain here is the second sister of the Inquisitorius, who is on Cal's tail. Apparently she's very strong with the Force, very clever. At the end of the trailer, you see her using the Force to take control of the stick shift on a ship and try and steer it while Cal is inside of it. But yeah, based on the trailer, it's a cool concept, cool setup. I'm leery just because Electronic Arts hasn't really done the best when it comes to video games based on Star Wars properties since Disney took over Lucasfilm. Battlefront was fun for a little bit, especially if you like first-person shooters, but or third-person shooters, whatever you like. But it was a little bit disappointing, especially with Battlefront 2 and the whole microtransaction fiasco and that kind of thing. So hopefully this gets back to doing a Star Wars video game that has a cool story, does some exciting things, and really allows you to use the full potential of being a Jedi on the run.
Well said. Okay, we've gone 30 minutes, and people are probably here listening to hear about The Mandalorian. The panel was broadcast online, but we didn't see the footage online. But before we get to that, and you can tell us about the footage, let's talk about The Mandalorian. This is the live-action TV series produced by Jon Favreau and Dave Filoni. It's coming to Disney Plus on November 12th, my birthday. Happy birthday to me. And they basically came on stage, and it did a lot of talking, didn't really reveal much at first, and then the floodgates opened. Okay, so let's what is this show about?
So the show is set a while after the events of Return of the Jedi.
I think he said 5 years or something.
Yeah, the First Order has not emerged yet. There are still remnants of the Empire around, stormtroopers and whatnot. And we follow this bounty hunter who's called the Mandalorian. He doesn't have a character name. That is how he is referred to, as he gets.
And he's played by Pedro Pascal.
Yes, Pedro Pascal of Game of Thrones and Narcos fame. Looks like a sleek, metallic version of Boba Fett. Very, very cool armor. Walks with a swagger. Clearly a badass character. You can tell by the way people react to him that he has a reputation. And in the setup is basically he gets this dangerous job and follows up on it, and it turns out to be a little bit different than he anticipated. We haven't officially heard why that is. There have been rumblings about it online. Which, do we want to talk about that, or do we just want to let people...
We'll skip that. I can link it in the show notes. We've written about it on the site, so if you want to know what kind of the pitch of this, I'm assuming this is going to be first episode things, but they didn't show it at this panel, so I feel let's not.
But the main gist is that he takes on some kind of job that is a little bit more dangerous and secretive than the jobs that he usually takes, but he's looking for something that pays a good price, and so he's up to the challenge.
Very cool. Okay, so let's talk about the other characters that are going to be in this. We know about the Mandalorian. There is Gina Carano is playing Cara Dune. Yeah,
she is another badass character. Appears to be Gina Carano confirmed that she's an ex-rebel shock trooper. And so she is clearly a badass. She has armor of her own, carries around these big guns. And in the footage, we see her getting into a scuffle with the Mandalorian, easily holding her own, wrestling with each other, and until they each land flat on their back and both have guns pointed at each other's head. So it looks like a cool possible companion for the Mandalorian, maybe a little bit of an adversarial friendship, which we're used to seeing in westerns and samurai movies, which were the large inspiration for the tone of the Mandalorian and the style of it.
Let's talk about Greef. This is the character played by Carl Weathers. It seems like we're seeing the last few days a lot of older African-American actors re-entering the Star Wars universe with Billy D. Williams and now Carl Weathers.
Yeah, Carl Weathers is in The Mandalorian, plays a new character named Greef. He's the commander of a team of bounty hunters. He's the guy who basically gives them their jobs and oversees how they go, making sure that they get paid or have new jobs to take. And having this character played by Carl Weathers is very cool as this, no weathered, no pun intended, feel to the character, a little bit of it's kind of a grizzly experienced guy who clearly doesn't take any guff on his own.
Yeah, and one of the cool things they revealed during this is they this show, even though it's a high budget, I think it's been rumored that it's like $10 million an episode or something, but they said they needed some scenes with a lot of stormtroopers, so they actually, instead of building the costumes and hiring the actors, they actually invited the 501st. This is the fan organization that creates their own cosplay and actually does a lot of charity events and like, for panels and stuff. Lucasfilm has actually involved them in the past. They actually involved them in the shooting of multiple episodes, and there's like some photos that are in the show notes, or I'll link to in the show notes. There's also, they talked about the Razor Crest. This is a ship that is in this series. Is this the Mandalorian ship, I'm assuming?
Yeah, this is the Mandalorian ship.
And interestingly, I'm not sure we'll see this when we actually see the show, but they talked about it during this panel that they actually created the ship practically as a miniature, kind of like they did back in, the original trilogy days. And they shot the ship as a miniature against, green screen or whatever, and or superimposing it against stars and stuff like that. And we saw some footage of that. That's all really cool that they're doing that. I'm wondering if it's going to be noticeable at all compared to like, CG ship or not. But I am all for them returning to old school techniques. What else did we learn during the panel before we talked about the footage?
What else did we learn during the panel, actually?
I guess maybe that they're fleshing out the canon of the Mandalorians, that, we don't really know much about what was going on with them since we heard there's some coverage of them in the prequels and in the
Clone Wars,
the animated series. But so this series is going to really flesh out what's going on with the Mandalorian in the original trilogy timeline, and making its way into the sequel trilogy, which is kind of cool. At the panel, they showed 2 different bits of footage, and neither of which were broadcast online. Although if you want to search on YouTube, you could maybe find a cam version.
Yeah, because Jon Favreau made the mistake of not telling the crowd before the first bit of footage played that no one was supposed to record. So tons of people were recording as soon as it started, but security that was already in place out in the thing was like trying to stop. They're like, "Hey, no recording." And so afterwards, Jon Favreau said, "Just so you guys know, you weren't supposed to record that." But like Peter said, you can find it out there. But there is a big chunk of footage that has not ended up online, which we'll talk about here in a second.
Okay, let's talk about this first thing, the Sizzle Reel. I have seen this, even though I'm not in Chicago. I somehow traveled to Chicago for a couple minutes and saw it, and I don't know. It looks cool. It looks like this is kind of a Western. Like, it looks more Western than any of the Star Wars films thus far.
Yeah, the tone of it definitely is much more Western. I mean, the original Star Wars and Rogue One, to an extent, do have the feel simply because of it has that worn style where everything is a little bit dusty and dirty, and clearly the technology maybe isn't the newest. And this has that same vibe. A lot of the scenes that we saw were set in kind of like small town village settings, similar to what we've seen on Tatooine and Jakku. Where that's not necessarily meaning that we're seeing scenes that are taking place on these planets, but just the desert environment was very similar and like a sci-fi Western would be. And the Mandalorian himself, walks with a very intimidating swagger, has a confidence, is always on his guard, looking around, never really trusting anybody. And we see that in the footage here. The first chunk of footage they showed was merely him tracking somebody by way of this little device that he had that was guiding him to whatever his bounty was. And the rest of it was mostly just a collection of behind the scenes footage, lots of quick shots of people working on set, directors with talking heads, concept art, quick action shots, lots of different aliens, droids, new bounty hunters, things like that. Just a wild, fast assembly of shots. So much that it was hard to pick up on everything.
Yeah, there's even a droid. IG-88, or maybe this is another IG. I don't even know. There's a chance it could be another IG, but it seems like it's probably IG-88. And that actually came in the second round of footage. Oh, okay. Is there anything more you had to say about that first round of footage? Because it's such a montage of like showing how the stuff is being produced. It had a bunch of quotes from the directors.
Yeah, the first footage was really more of just like a setup of like introducing people to what the Mandalorian was going to be, what they were trying to accomplish, the very basic gist of the story, the various directors that we've heard who are working on it, what they're bringing to the table, and just a very general idea of what the series will be.
Yeah, and I mean, the one thing I can say from everything that they showed is everything looks so Star Wars, like so original trilogy Star Wars. Like it really, I don't know. I'm so excited for this. Like it, not that I'm not excited for the Rise of Skywalker, but this really feels like it's my jam.
No, I was absolutely floored by this footage because it's not that I wasn't excited about The Mandalorian, but I was cautiously optimistic simply because you're taking something that has such a large blockbuster scope and trying to turn it into a TV series. And sometimes when you take a big property like that and bring it down to a small screen scale, it cheapens it, literally and figuratively. Take, for example, like you look at a show like Marvel's Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. or even the Netflix shows, which spent more money but still didn't always feel cinematic. This feels cinematic as hell. It looks gorgeous. It looks like it has a real budget. It doesn't feel like a cheap TV show version of Star Wars. It legit fits in with the vibe and style of the original trilogy and also Rogue One, simply because of the era in which it's set.
Okay, let's talk about the next bit of footage. This is footage that I don't think you can find online at this point. You got to see a scene from the show?
Basically two scenes that were linked together. So the first scene has the Mandalorian sitting down with Carl Weathers' character Greef. He's laying out these little metal discs. They kind of look like jar lids. And as he's laying them out, he's saying, "Bail jumper, bail jumper." He's like, they're all bail jumpers. He's like, I got one wanted smuggler. He's laying them out like they're jobs. They're called pucks. They have the information on them that the Mandalorian needs in order to pursue their targets. And he wants to take them all, but since Greef is in charge of a whole guild of bounty hunters, he has to be able to give them jobs too, so he's not willing to give them all up. The Mandalorian asks what the highest one he has. It's only 5,000 credits, so he's not very impressed. But then Greef says, he's like, well, I do have this one other job. He held it back for a reason because it sounds dangerous. They don't even have a puck for this job. It's a direct commission that he has to meet the person who's hiring him face to face, and it's a request that's coming from the underworld. So this is definitely a dark, seedy job.
Okay, and that is the end of that scene. It sounds pretty cool. I wish I could see this.
Yeah,
can't wait until my birthday. What is the next scene we see?
So linking the two scenes, the Mandalorian kind of walks through the streets of this village. Like I said, looks like Jakku or Tatooine. Feels very.
Is this village the one that we've seen in the set photos?
It would seem to be, yes. It has the same desert vibe. A lot of tents, a lot of dusty clothes, things like that. And so he's walking to where this person is. He's been given a data card to find them, and he gets to this door and knocks on it. And this little like droid arm eye comes out, similar to the one that comes out of Jabba's palace door and talks to 3PO and R2. And so scans the card, lets him in. He's met by this very hospitable gonk droid. And so he's gonking away as he's walking him back to this other door. And as he goes in there, there's a group of dusty stormtroopers who are standing in there with blasters. And Werner Herzog shows up. Didn't catch his character name. I thought that maybe Greef said it during their meeting, but it was hard to catch. But this character is just the perfect character for Werner Herzog. This very ominous, person. The way he speaks with such purpose, and it's intimidating without trying. And so he talks to the Mandalorian, tells him he's been expecting them. Suddenly, another door opens nearby, and like the Mandalorian just immediately jumps up with his blasters drawn, and the stormtroopers all draw at him too. And it's just this Imperial officer who's played by Omid Tahi. And so he comes in and he's very apologetic. He's like, "I'm sorry. It's like, what, didn't mean to, startle you or anything like that." And in the perfect like Werner Herzog way, he just very politely says, "Please excuse his lack of decorum. His enthusiasm outweighs his discretion."
I can totally hear that in my brain right now.
Yeah. I won't even try to do a Werner Herzog impression. It'll just be depressing.
Yeah.
So the Mandalorian still has his blaster drawn, doesn't trust anybody, and so he tries to get the stormtroopers to lower their blasters, and he's like, after they do, and then the stormtrooper says, he's like, "We have you outnumbered 4-1," and he says, "I like those odds," and so everyone finally puts their guns away. They get back to business talking about what this job is. And basically it's somebody that they want alive, which is not usual for a bounty hunter. But the Werner Herzog says if they have to, they'll accept this person dead, but it'll be for a smaller fee. And the Imperial officer isn't necessarily too keen on that for whatever reason. You don't necessarily know why. But Herzog's character knows that this job is complicated, so they'll take whatever they can get, basically. Again, there's no puck for this job. What he gives them is this tracker that apparently has the last known whereabouts of this person, and they also have the last 4 digits of their identification number.
Is this the same tracker we saw in the other footage?
It is. It is the same tracker from the first footage that was beeping and that he was following. And from what I understood, I believe that they were saying that this target is 50 years old. Because they're old for some reason, it's been difficult to find this person. I'm not necessarily sure what that means, but with the information he's providing, Herzog is confident that the Mandalorian can pull it off. And the price, he unwraps from this small cloth, is a piece of Beskar, which is Mandalorian iron, something that is very valuable and rare, and that the Mandalorian people would want back. And Herzog even says in kind of a taunting way, says that it would be good to restore order to things after a period of such disarray. So it seems like there's some kind of hint that maybe he would prefer to see the Mandalorians kind of come back to power and achieve their old glory, or he's just trying to use that to taunt the Mandalorian into taking the job so that he'll do what he needs him to do.
Yeah, this scene sounds awesome. Everything about everything you're saying sounds awesome. No,
it was so cool. Just the tone of it and the style, and just the having Werner Herzog and Carl Weathers these roles. The Mandalorian himself is just so cool. Just the physicality of it, simply because we don't see his face or anything, and you get this vibe of that he's always looking around and never trusting the room and always prepared to survive at any given point, no matter what is thrown at him. It's a very cool character. And so then after that, they showed what it will amount to, I assume, is probably the first teaser trailer they'll show whenever they get around to it. And so it's lots of quick shots. You see Mandalorian's Razor Crest ship blasting through space. It's actually the exact shot that they showed us how they made it with the models and the small camera rigs. We meet Gina Carano's character, Cara Dune, and the Mandalorian asks what's her business here. They end up getting into a spar and trading blows, drawing guns at each other. We see Giancarlo Esposito for the first time. He's wearing a black cape with black Imperial armor, no helmet. He's surrounded by a small group of Death Troopers, and they've just blasted away a bunch of holes in one of the small desert dwellings, like one of the buildings, basically. And you hear Werner Herzog in voiceover saying the Empire has improved every planet it touches. And Giancarlo Esposito's character then says, burn them out. And this stormtrooper that has red paint accents on his helmet and his armor comes in with this huge flamethrower and just starts torching it.
And by huge flamethrower, that flame is going 20 feet or something.
He's standing far away and he is blasting it with a huge stream of fire. And then the voiceover continues, says, judged by any metric, safety, prosperity, peace. And you see a bunch of shots of different bounty hunters, different aliens. I'm not sure if this is a team of bounty hunters that is in conflict with the Mandalorian or maybe friends with the Mandalorian in the way that bounty hunters are. You see this kind of fuchsia-colored Twi'lek who looks to be a little bit feisty. You see what looks to be Bill Burr, comedian Bill Burr, as a bounty hunter holding 2 blaster pistols and blasting away at an unseen target. Another character that looks kind of like the bounty hunter Forlom from Empire Strikes Back, a droid with these metallic eyes, but it wasn't Forlom, but it looked similar. Lots of shots of aliens, other warriors, Jawas drawing their blasters, the Mandalorian fighting with stormtroopers. An incredible shot that elicited cheers was IG-88 standing in the middle of a village square and blasting stormtroopers, his body spinning around as he's shooting them. The Mandalorian fighting style is badass. He uses his longer rifle, which is something that Boba Fett carried in his first debut in animated form in the Christmas special, where it's not only a blaster, but it has these prongs on the end of it that electrocute, and he uses that to electrocute a stormtrooper. You see Giancarlo Esposito flying a TIE fighter. The Mandalorian takes one crushing blow to a stormtrooper with, I think, is the butt of his rifle, and the bottom half of the stormtrooper's helmet crumbles into pieces, he cracks it like it's made of porcelain. It's just the action here looks amazing. it's just I was way more impressed with this footage than I thought I would be, and I cannot wait to see this show.
Yeah, it looks so good. I'm bummed that this footage isn't officially online for everybody to see. But again, if you do some searching on Reddit or YouTube, I'm sure you could probably find a cam footage of it. Not that I recommend you do so, but I'm assuming you could. Okay, so this comes out November 12th. It's going to be day one on Disney Plus streaming service. So excited. You are still at Star Wars Celebration. What are your plans for the rest of the con?
So they're going to release some more of the Galaxy's Edge merch that'll be on sale there. So I'm going to snap some more pictures of that. The remaining big panel is the 20th anniversary celebration of the Phantom Menace. That's happening on Monday. So I'll be checking that out, seeing if there's any cool stories or anything that comes out of that panel.
Yeah, I wonder if Palpatine will be there.
He's definitely a confirmed guest, and I think that when they confirmed him, it was supposed to be just for the Phantom Menace panel. So him appearing at Episode 9 was a surprise.
Yeah.
So he'll definitely be at the Phantom Menace panel.
I'm sure JJ will not allow him to say anything, but it'll be interesting to see what he does say.
Yeah, absolutely. If anything.
If anything. Brad, where can people find more of your work online?
Slashfilm.com. Check out some of the stuff that I've been doing from Star Wars Celebration here and everything else about movie and TV news there. Check me out on Twitter at Ethan_Anderton. See some of the silly Star Wars stuff that I bought. And then also check out my own podcast, Go Flix Yourself, if you need a break and just want to listen to some ridiculous movie trivia, wisecracking nonsense.
You can find me at Slashfilm on all social media. You can find all the stories we talked about on today's podcast on slashfilm.com and linked in the show notes. This podcast is published every weekday at least, and is on iTunes, Google, Overcast, Spotify, all the popular podcast apps. Please feel free to send your feedback, questions, comments, concerns to us at peter@slashfilm.com. And please head on over to our iTunes page, give us a 5-star review, tell your friends, spread the word, and we'll see you maybe not tomorrow, but at least the next day.